Hello there, we're back for segment 9 of my journey through musical theater. I left off in the year of 1991, where my last performance had been in the musical Grease, and I had recently given birth, and then I spent the next several years, at least 11 years, directing and choreographing and doing the music for productions at Brunswick High School and Brunswick Middle School. As my daughter was growing, she was getting more and more involved in musical theater too, and eventually the time came where she wanted to try out for something at the local dinner theater. They were doing The Sound of Music. It was the summer audition in 2001. So she and I went together, and we went to the Way Off Broadway Dinner Theater, and we tried out for The Sound of Music. Unfortunately, Stephanie didn't make it that time. She wasn't the right height or the right fit for any of the children in the Von Trapp household. And that was very hard to explain to her, but she eventually understood. With both parents being directors, she kind of got it. And then, but I did get cast. The director knew me. She'd worked with me before. She was thrilled to see me back out trying again. So Susan Thornton, she had cast me as one of the nuns and then some of the people in the ensemble throughout the show. So I got to play Sister Margheretta, and not Margarita, Margheretta. And she, I like to think of, was the nice nun. She liked Maria. She found Maria charming and laughable. She wasn't one of the nasty nuns who wanted Maria out of the abbey. Anyway, that was The Sound of Music. And I went on to play nuns a lot at Way Off Broadway. And I loved it because the costumes were so nice. I never had to worry about a costume fitting because it was like a one-size-fits-all. They were comfortable. I could move around in them. It meant no costume changes in most cases. So I got to play a nun a few times at Way Off Broadway. One production, a couple years down the road, was Nunsense, and I got to play a part of Sister Robert Ann, and I have a picture that it's actually hanging on my wall downstairs because it was a really fun part to play, and this picture had appeared in the Frederick News Post entertainment section years ago, so I just cut it out of the newspaper and then made a copy. Anyway, that was Sister Robert Ann. And she was the nun that drove the bus with the other nuns, and she could fix the flat tire, and she was a little bit edgy. She had things to say that weren't not always the most appropriate for a nun to say. So I really enjoyed playing that part. It was somewhat out of character for me. She did, however, have a beautiful song that she sung that opened Act 2 called Growing Up Catholic. So I'm going to share that with you right now. Growing Up Catholic. At St. Clair's School, religion class began with Mass each day. It was said in Latin then, that's how I learned to pray. The nuns appeared in black and white, and so did every rule. Things were either wrong or right at St. Clair's Catholic School. Hosanna in excelsis, in excelsis. But the rules began to change, and many lost their way. What was always black or white was turning shades of gray. Holy, 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 holy Lord. All Mass is said in English now to make us more aware. Confusion seem to reign supreme, but God, it's everywhere. The church is quite progressive now, though people ridicule. So many things are optional, it's hard to find a rule. But through it all, I've often said those ancient Latin prayers that I first learned when growing up Catholic at St. Clair's. Hosanna in excelsis, in excelsis, in excelsis, Hosanna in excelsis. That was a lot of fun playing Sister Robert Ann. And a few years later, they were going to do Nunsense Part 2. But this time, they asked me to play a different nun. I got to play Sister Amnesia. And she is the nun that got clonked on the head and she lost her memory. She remembers nothing. She's kind of an airhead, kind of a flake, and she talks to a puppet, Sister Margheretta, which was a lot of fun carrying that puppet around everywhere I went. Sister Amnesia was a lot of fun to play. I remember one night at the performance, I was in the middle of a song that I sang with the marionette, and somehow or another my brain got all tied up and I blanked, and I didn't know what the next lyric was. So I started making stuff up singing. And I can remember we had a live orchestra playing that night, and Eric Seebach was sitting there playing the piano, and I kind of glanced over him, and he looked at me all confused, like, I have no idea where you are. How am I going to follow you? I don't know how we got through it, but we did, and I scared myself to death. So now I I'm very apprehensive about taking on a role, a significant role, where I have to learn a whole lot of lines, because it's scary when you're up there and you forget what you're doing. And that had happened to me during that show. Played a lot of parts at Way Off Broadway, lots of bit parts, fun parts, comical roles, ensemble pieces. Some of them that I can rattle off to you. I was in some of their Christmas shows, and I got to play, sing different Christmas carols and that, because they were always home written, the Christmas shows at Way Off Broadway. I got to play in the ensemble for Annie. I was one of the Hooverville people and one of the maids, and I got to do a little dancing and a lot of singing in the background, and I really enjoyed doing that. Less stress, less pressure. I played Annie M in The Wizard of Oz, and I was also a little Ozian, and I got to also use a puppet because all of the Munchkins were marionette puppets with people in between, so that was fun. I got to play Marie in La Cage aux Folles. That was the politician's wife. If you know La Cage, it was a silly kind of role for me. I enjoyed that. And then I also got to play Joni in The Full Monty. And The Full Monty, it was a very small role I had, but what an experience being in that show. It was a lot of fun. Met some great friends there. After The Full Monty, we did Thoroughly Modern Millie, and I got to play the part of Miss Flannery, and she's like the head secretary. She's really mean and boisterous, and they put me in a wig that was like a mile high up on my head, and it was kind of tilted off to the side, and I got to do a little tap dance solo in Forget About the Boy during that production. I loved that role. That was fun, and I think that's the first time I was on stage with my friend Jordan. Beyond that, let's see, I did Dora Bailey and the vocal coach when they did Singing in the Rain, and that was fun. I got to tap dance. I enjoyed that. And then I also played, my most recent role was Domina in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and that was a great role for me. Nice and tiny, one song, couple of lines here and there, and I loved it. I ate that up. That was great fun to be a part of, and I enjoyed that cast. I was in a lot of children's theater during my course or my time at Way Off Broadway. I've played anything from the goose that laid golden eggs in Jack and the Beanstalk to the Wicked Witch in Rapunzel. And then I was also Mama Bear in The Three Little Bears. I was Ellie Mae Pig in The Three Little Pigs. And you name any animal costume, I was in it. I was Chicken Little when they did one of the productions. I can't even remember what the show was that Chicken Little appeared in. It may have been Chicken Little, but I just can remember I kept going, the sky is falling throughout the whole show. I got to play a split personality of 3 fairies from Sleeping Beauty. That was exciting. And then I also got to play Charlotte the spider in Charlotte's Web. And that was probably the easiest and most fun role I played because my daughter was also in it. She played Wilbur the pig for some of the performances. So I got to work with her and I didn't have to memorize my lines. I got to read them from backstage, from behind the partition between the barn, and then I would reach my arm over the barn to the top of the barn, and I had this puppet on my hand to play the spider, so I could read the lines and then be the spider at the same time. I'm a very lazy actress, if you ask me. Anyway, that was my that's pretty much my experiences in musical theater. I'm sure I've left some shows out, but those are the ones that I've mentioned are the ones that continue to I continue to relive the experiences and think about. So thank you for joining me. If I do a segment 10, it will probably be my dream roles that I would love to play someday, but no, probably never will, and that's okay. So thank you for joining me, and until next time, bye-bye.